From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo, and this is From the South. Leaders from the Bolivarian Alliance of the Peoples of the Americas, or ALBA, are gathering for a summit in Caracas on the 5th anniversary of the death of President Hugo Chavez. On the eve of the summit, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro sent a message of unity and inclusion to all Venezuelans. He urged them to head to the polls for the elections on May 20th. He called on the opposition candidates to conduct a clean campaign and to let policy ideas determine the outcome of the race.
This is my message today to the other candidates and to all Venezuelans. Let's conduct a clean campaign. Let ideas be the strategy to convince electors instead of insults. We have to work harder and better. I defend what we have accomplished so far, but most of all, I defend the right we all have to build a new path. Our commander Hugo Chavez used to say Venezuela is bigger when we build it together. Today that thought is more relevant than ever.
Bolivian President Evo Morales arrived in Caracas early Monday to take part in the 15th ALBA summit. Morales was received by Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza and Vice President Ricardo Menéndez. ALBA TCP participating nations are expected to ratify support for Venezuela's right to resolve political differences without foreign intervention. An international event in solidarity with Venezuela is also taking place. 5 years after his death, the former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez is still a force to be reckoned with in Venezuela. Our Caracas correspondent, Freddie Gillingham, has more.
Good morning all from me in Caracas. It is indeed a very special day in the Venezuelan calendar. 5 years since the passing of the former President Hugo Chavez. Still very much a towering present here in Venezuela, whose legacy and influence very much living on. Pictures, posters, murals, banners of the late leader adorn the capital here. Ideologically, his policies of the Bolivarian Revolution are being deepened by his successor, President Nicolás Maduro. Maduro is expected to be hosting an ALBA summit. He will be welcoming various leaders from around a dozen countries from the region. The ALBA summit is, of course, an initiative that was launched by Hugo Chavez many years ago. He was a key promoter and believer in the integration of Latin America and the Caribbean. In regards to social forces, there's going to be various activities, workshops, exhibitions throughout the week across the country. Hopefully we're going to be going to some of those in the 23 de Enero neighborhood of Western Caracas, a neighborhood that certainly remembers him very well here in the capital. We'll bring you updates from that throughout the next couple of days.
Thank you, Freddie, for that report. And now a special report on the legacy of Hugo Chavez. A teleSUR crew has been through the city of Caracas to see how people remember him.
Hugo Chavez died on March the 5th, 2013, but his memory lives on through his followers. Many people remember him years after his death. Even children know his legacy and feel he is still with them.
For me, Chavez was a great man. He worked for his country and put his eyes on the poor. That is why he'll always be in my heart.
Chavez is like my family. He helped my family to build our home.
Chavez was president between 1999 and 2013. He's still worshipped in many parts of Venezuela. His eyes, painted in different spots of the cities, still watch over the country. In 2002, a coup d'etat removed him from power for 48 hours. He called elections almost once a year, and also a referendum in 2004, which he won. But his followers remember him more for the social policies he applied.
He taught us love, and he loved us. I'm disabled, and he helped me a lot. I keep him in my heart, and for me, he's still alive.
One of Chavez's main accomplishments was to establish democracy, and it is still present in modern-day Venezuela.
He's still alive in the hearts of Venezuelans. He was really an impressive president.
The revolution he started and led has a new appointment in electoral schedules. The opposition doesn't have a strong political plan, but is still supported by the United States, which applies strong pressure trying to break Venezuela's stability. That is why this is a huge challenge for them in the next elections.
Hugo Chavez is remembered in Ecuador for the support he gave to the country and to former President Rafael Correa.
Hugo Chavez found a friend in Rafael Correa and an ally to begin the brotherhood between Ecuador and Venezuela. His support was key to the process of the citizen revolution, which is remembered today by its members.
It was beyond utopian, or simply a dream of integration. Definitely what Chavez did was demonstrate that progressivism can transform the advancement of our people, and that these improvements can't be separate, because we're part of a region that must work together.
The shared ideology of the two leaders to defend socialism in the 21st century materialized through social and commercial programs. Breaking the hegemony of the United States and Europe was a key focus with the relationship of Chavez and Correa. It was clear that the commercial exchange between Latin American countries was a priority.
Here we are demonstrating that cooperation, integration, and brotherhood is possible.
For several young Ecuadorian politicians, Chavez left his integrationist thoughts as a legacy, and that is how they remember him.
We had a training exchange once, and the whole camp in Caracas was surprised when Chavez himself showed up. He talked with Latin American youth. Chavez was a great statesman. He always thought about the future, and he made it very clear that we can't do it on our own, that we must do it with all of Latin America united.
But the presence of Hugo Chavez in Ecuador goes beyond that. In this state school in Quito, he is not forgotten. Thanks to him, nearly 200 kids benefited from the improvements of the infrastructure of the school. Chavez himself visited the school in 2002.
This plaque was made by the parents because of all the work that he did in our institution. When he came, he unveiled this plaque. It says, "The School Republic of Venezuela parents and students gave this plaque to President Hugo Chavez to thank and commemorate him for his work."
In the school, Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the computer lab is named after Hugo Chavez. He was the one who donated computers for the students to use.
It was the first time that the institution had a computer lab, and this was a novelty. The computer classes started, and it was very good, an improvement for the school.
This is part of the legacy that Chavez left in Ecuador, a legacy that for many left lessons of equality and social justice.
And El Salvador is still waiting for definitive results from its parliamentary and municipal elections on Sunday. The Supreme Electoral Tribunal says only 48% of the votes have been processed. According to preliminary data, the Nationalist Republic Alliance Party, Arena, is in the lead and has already begun to claim victory. Voter turnout was around 45%. Authorities have not said when the results will be released. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In Cuba, more than 200,000 electoral authorities have participated in drills for the general elections on March 11th. The Electoral Commission explained that the objective is to check the availability of the materials and human resources that will be needed in the elections.
This is one of the 24,000 polling stations where Cubans will come on March 11th, when they will elect delegates for the local assemblies and parliament legislators. During the electoral drill on Sunday, the members checked all the details to assure a smooth voting process for citizens.
The voters can choose between the candidates who they like the most, and they can vote for all the candidates or one by one. We must assure that the voters show their ID in this electoral drill. We are taking into account all of these aspects.
If citizens are outside of their communities for any reason, they can vote in one of the 143 special polling stations all over the country. This is one of them, located in the main bus station in Havana.
This is set up so that people can vote in our special polling station and to not be restrained by schedules that are set up only between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m.
In the electoral drill, polling station staff and electoral commission members from the community and the national level participated.
In the electoral drill, we check the process of communication, how it works, the transportation of each polling station. We hand out the documentation and the ballot boxes.
At the end of the electoral drill, a review of the entire process took place to check for any failures detected regarding the conditions of materials and the logistical process. Cuba's electoral authorities will give a press conference to detail the results of the electoral drill. They will also give details about the elections on March 11th, which will see 8 million Cubans head to the polls.
In Orleans, on the Caribbean island of St. Martin, Hurricane Irma caused massive devastation from flooding. 6 months later, the area is still struggling to rebuild. When Hurricane Irma struck in September, winds of 182 miles per hour ripped buildings apart. Irma caused as much as $3 billion in damage and losses. St. Martin's tourism industry says only 20% of the country's hotel rooms are available for use.
We are the ones doing it, bit by bit, with the money we have, bit by bit. Nobody gives us anything. The only thing anyone gave me here was water, but whatever helps, nonetheless.
No more house, nothing. It took everything. It left nothing, only the clothes I had on me. I prepared a lot of stuff to take with me to Santo Domingo. Everything's gone now.
The Lenca people of Honduras built an ancestral altar to honor the memory of slain indigenous activist Berta Cáceres in La Esperanza, Intibucá Department, on Saturday. Berta Cáceres was shot dead at her home on March 2nd, 2016. She was spearheading a campaign against the dam being built by Desarrollos Energéticos on Río Hualcarque. The river is sacred to the Lenca people. Her mother, Austra Flores, attended the commemoration ceremony inside the altar.
Remembering that rebellious woman, the woman who leaves a seed sown, not only in Honduras, but in the whole world. Thanks. Thank you, Eternal Lord.
Police arrested the executive president of Desarrollos Energéticos, the hydroelectric company behind the dam, in connection with Cáceres' killing in San Pedro Sula on Friday. David Castillo Mejia is charged with helping to plan the crime. He is in the 9th arrest made in connection with the killing. Relatives of Berta Cáceres commented on his arrest in La Esperanza on Saturday.
During the 2 years since the murder of Berta, we have been maintaining and sustaining that not only did this gentleman have a part in the intellectual authorship of the crime, but in a 2016 statement from the Secretary of Security and the prosecution, around 15 other people are mentioned.
Each year, one person is captured. Possibly when 3 years will pass, another suspect will be captured. What is important is that one of the intellectual authors has fallen, one who she constantly denounced.
In Mexico, the Institutional Revolutionary Party celebrated its 89th anniversary. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto decided not to attend the event, leaving the party's presidential candidate, José Antonio Meade, to lead the celebration. The polls placed Meade in 3rd place heading into the election. Mexico, Canada, and the United States continue to renegotiate the NAFTA agreement after the Trump administration proposed new tariffs on steel and aluminum. Canada, the single largest supplier of both steel and aluminum to the United States, says any tariffs would be totally unacceptable. The prospect of a trade war sparked by the imposition of Trump's proposed tariffs rattled financial markets last week. In Ecuador, peaceful demonstrations in support of former Vice President Jorge Glass continue.
Outside prison number 4 in Quito has once again been the setting for demonstrations calling for the release of former Ecuadorian Vice President Jorge Glass.
For us, he is not incarcerated, he is kidnapped. He has been in prison for 5 months. There are people out there that have evidence against them, and nothing is done.
Social organizations and supporters of the citizen revolution were present in the peaceful demonstrations. For them, Jorge Glass is still a political prisoner, and his innocence must be proved.
All of Latin America, the whole region, must look at what's happening in Ecuador about these injustices against Jorge Glass and several members of the citizen revolution.
The supporters denounced police brutality against them, even though the demonstrations to demand the former vice president's freedom were peaceful.
They have taken everything that they wanted, but we are not going to let them take away his freedom. It's unacceptable.
The demonstrators have said they will continue their fight to free Jorge Glass until justice has been served.
A new law against harassment and political violence in Bolivia protects rights for women who apply for public office jobs in an attempt to guarantee gender equality.
The law against harassment and political violence against women has been in effect since May of 2012. It prevents sexism and gender discrimination.
If you see the chart behind me, it shows how assemblies were before, without women. Their struggle and the recognition made by President Evo and his political process has allowed women to access politics. This way excludes neoliberal policies, which used to see women just secondary members to complete their parties.
The law established methods of prevention of and sanctions for harassment and political violence against women in order to guarantee their political rights. This is still being strengthened.
Bolivian society and politicians must learn that women have the same rights as men and that we won't let go of our achievements.
This guarantees that for every position there will be equality for men and women. Nevertheless, this law still has holes to plug, such as the lack of proper rules to sanction cases of harassment and political violence in public institutions.
None of
the national public institutions, not even the Plurinational Legislative Assembly, has made changes. So we found that assembly members don't have a place to put their complaints. They are presenting now in the Ethics Commission.
The main problem is the patriarchal mentality and sexism in society. Even women hold back the progress. This makes it more difficult to apply the law.
Silence is kept in a political harassment situation because it comes from within the political sphere, and when it is reported, the harassed woman is accused of treason. If one has political aspirations, the last thing you want to do is looking for quarrels in the party you work for.
According to women's rights organizations, since 2000, more than 4,000 reports were received, all of them cases of harassment and political violence. They see this as justification for the need to ratify the law, which would punish people committing these crimes.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. 130,000 supporters of Russian President Vladimir Putin held a rally dubbed For a Strong Russia at the National Stadium in Moscow Saturday, ahead of the upcoming presidential election on March 18th.
We have clear, noble goals. We want to make our country bright and future-oriented. Because our ancestors lived here, we live here, and our children live and will live here, as well as our grandchildren. We will do our best to make them happy. We will do this, yes? Instead of us and except for us, no one will do it. But if we do this, the next decades, the whole of the 21st century, will pass under this sign of our bright victories. We will do this, yes?
Meanwhile, ballot boxes were delivered to remote villages on Lake Baikal ahead of early voting. The only connection between these Baikal villages, including the village of Litzvianka, seen in the footage, is by ice. In the summer, people gain access to the village by boat. There are only 47 people in the village, and they were called to vote during the weekend, earlier than the majority of Russians. South Korea's top security officials have traveled to Pyongyang, North Korea, to meet country's President Kim Jong-un. It is the first time Kim Jong-un will talk to officials from the South in person since he took office in 2011. The 10th member South Korean delegation will try to pave the way for a dialogue between Pyongyang and Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he would agree to talks only if North Korea agrees to put ending to its nuclear program on the table for discussion. So far, Kim Jong-un has refused to give in and also said that the talks should be equal. Now let's have a look at some other news from around the world.
Early results of Sunday's vote in Italy suggest a hung parliament. The rightist Alliance Forza Italia, along with Anti-Immigrant League and Neo-Fascist Brothers of Italy, appear to be coming out on top, followed by anti-establishment Five-Star Movement. The political parties are floating the possibility of forming a coalition by the end of the month. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is set to enter a fourth term in office after the opposition Social Democratic Party agreed to support a coalition government with Merkel's Christians Democratic Union. SPD's support ends almost 6 months of uncertainty in German politics. Merkel has been in power for 12 years. After the announcement, she said she wants to start work quickly on issues of international trade policy.
What we are seeing and hearing every day is that Europe needs to step up and Germany needs to have a strong voice there along with France and other member states when it comes to issues like, most recently, international trade policies. A lot of jobs here depend on that.
Aid and relief convoy has started entering eastern Ghouta in Syria. The humanitarian supplies have been halted since mid-February. The convoy includes 46 trucks transporting 5,500 food baskets and medical supplies. The aid delivery was made possible after the UN passed a resolution for a ceasefire last month.
Anti-fascist Catalan rapper Pablo Hasél has been sentenced to 2 more years in prison by a Spanish court. Spanish authorities said the ruling was based on Hasél's lyrics and tweets, which they deem as directed against the authority of the state. The rapper insists his statements are examples of resistance. Mexican director Guillermo del Toro was the biggest winner at the 19th Academy Awards in Los Angeles. His movie The Shape of Water won 4 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Score, and Best Production Design. Frances McDormand won the Best Actress Award for the dark comedy 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and Gary Oldman won the Best Actor for playing World War II leader Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour. And we've come to the end of this morning's news brief. These and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.